Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call this meeting to order. First order of business as disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none. The minutes from November the 18th. Was there any errors or omissions? If not, I'll take a mover and second over the minutes. Serna and Moore, all in favor? Carried. No delegations. Next, we have a minor variance. This is by Kayla and Jason Smith. Application number D13MV 08B-21. Part block 135, plan 120, known as 51211 Clinton Street, Township of South Dorchester. So I need a mover and seconder. The Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Malahide be called to order. 7:31. Mayor Dave Mennel be appointed chairperson of the Committee of Adjustment. Winder, Lewis, all in favor? Carried. Adam, can you give us an overview of the application, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. The application seeks a minor variance to establish an accessory building on a residential lot here in Springfield. The minor variance is required because there's a buried municipal drain along the easterly side of the subject property. So this minor variance is one that doesn't have any impact on any neighboring properties with regards to being too close to lot lines or having an impact on any neighbor's property or the enjoyment or anything like that. What this is simply doing is, what the zoning bylaw serves in this purpose is making sure that the township or the authority over the drain has physical access, making sure that nothing is blocking physical access in the event of a drain blockage. Our drainage superintendent has reviewed and has provided that he has no comments with regards to the application, provided that we enter as a condition of approval a development agreement registered on the property that would allow, in the event that the township would need to access the property or resolve an issue with the drain, that we could have any physical obstructions removed. In this case, it could be a fence. So the drainage superintendent thinks that there's enough room between where they want to place the accessory building and the drain, but any fence put up could pose an obstruction. So unless there's any questions from committee members or those from the public, there's nothing further to add to my report.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Does the applicant have any additional information? Seeing none. Allison, was there any comments received from agencies and landowners?
Through you, Your Worship, only what was noted in the report from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority with no objection.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Max?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add, you're definitely sure that this is going to give clearance if that drain has to be worked on, because that's a rather important headwaters of a drain that goes south and then crosses over farther down under Springfield Road.
Adam?
Through you, Your Worship, I could see our drainage superintendent on the Zoom meeting nodding his head yes. So he's reviewed this, and is from a physical access perspective, as long as there's no fence put up along the easterly lot line, there should be plenty of room for access to resolve any drain issues.
Thank you. And in regards to that fence, someone has to make sure that those posts do not penetrate that drain.
If I may, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Bob.
So the existing drain is 1/2 meter off the property line. I have no objection to fencing being installed, as long as the applicant or the landowners are aware that if I do have to come and make a drain repair that requires the fence to come down, the fence will have to come down at some point. And they'll have to, reinstall the fence themselves. I don't have any objection to actually erecting a fence, because it'll be far enough away from the drain that it won't pose a problem. And sorry, the drain itself I believe it's an 8-inch drain. It's only a short run from the back of the property out to the street. Most of the maintenance can be done from the catch basin at the street. If anything short of a collapse of a pipe, which I don't think it is. It's a modern drain with modern, modern parts and stuff. So I don't foresee any issues with maintenance in this little small corridor. It's big enough that I can get a machine down if I have.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, mover and seconder, report number DS 21-58, entitled Minor Variance Application D13MV08B-21 of Kayla and Jason Smith, affected lands described as part of Block 135 on Plan 120, Part 1 of 11R-8851, Township of Malahide, 51211 Clinton Street be received. Township of Malahide Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance application of D13MV08B-21 for relief from the minimum municipal drain setback requirement of 7.5 meters in order to construct an accessory building on the subject property 3.5 meters from Clinton Street drain. And that the approval be subject to the following conditions. One, that a development agreement be registered on title stating that any fencing on the subject land eastern boundary may need to be removed to accommodate future drainage, maintenance, or installation at no cost to the township. Mover and seconder. Lewis and Jagger, all in favor? Next, we have another minor variance. The application is Todd and Lori Sprague. Application number D13MV09-21, part lot 78, South Talbot Road, municipally known as 9281 Rogers Road, geographic township of Malahide. So Adam, can you give us an overview of the application?
Thank you, Your Worship. For this application, the Township's planning consultant, Dan Smith, will be providing an overview.
Okay, Dan?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of the committee. We have an application before us for tonight for a minor variance, a property located on the west side of Rogers Road, south of Talbot Line. It's an existing residential lot. The lot itself comes in at over an acre in size. It's comparable in size to other existing lots in that area. And it's occupied right at the present time by a single detached dwelling. The owners are proposing to erect an accessory building on the property situated to the rear of the dwelling. The property itself is zoned small lot agricultural, A4. In that A4 zone, an accessory building is limited to a maximum floor area of 200 square meters. In this case, the proposed accessory building would be in the order of 335 square meters. We have evaluated the application in terms of prevailing zoning standards and other instances where we have dealt with accessory buildings which exceed the maximum size. In this instance, we're not able to support the application because it wouldn't satisfy the parameters of meeting definition of being a building that is accessory to the main use. Part of the reasons we have those standards in the zoning bylaw are to prevent accessory buildings from overshadowing the main use and really conflicting with neighboring properties and the enjoyment of their property. In this case, we are aware of some comments that were submitted by a neighbor who really doesn't have any objections with respect to the size of the building. They are more concerned with its location on the parcel itself. We're looking at we always look at these things from the standpoint of whether or not they're defensible if on appeal they ever went to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And we believe it will be difficult to defend the size of the building, given the current bylaw restrictions. That being said, we're aware that the committee may choose to grant the application. And in that case, a couple of conditions are suggested. And I will read from my paper on that one, just to give the committee some idea of the two conditions that we would recommend if the application is in fact granted. First condition, that the owner applicant obtain the necessary building permits and obtain occupancy of the proposed structure within 1 year from the date of the decision, and to the satisfaction of the chief building official, ensuring that the approved variance applies only to the proposed detached accessory structure, which is to be situated 15.2 meters from the rear property line. The second condition, if the application is granted, would be that the owner applicant enter into a development agreement with the Township of Malahide to regulate the use, the architectural design, and the location of the proposed detached accessory structure on the subject property, and any screening deemed appropriate in relation to abutting properties. So that basically concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Allison, was there any comments received from the agencies and landowners?
Through your worship, correspondence was received from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority with no objections, and then correspondence, as Dan mentioned, was received from Gary and Pat Demers with some concerns.
Okay. Gary, do you wish to make comment?
I had submitted a letter to council. Not really anything to say other than we're supportive of it, providing the front of the garage is where the back is now planned to be. I think that would leave 15.2 meters behind the garage, and then the garage would be there. And so the front of the garage, I think, is at 33.5 meters from the back of the property. And I spoke to, so that's our concern, is that it be put back. That way it's not immediately adjacent to the main part of or the living part of our backyard. And speak to the neighbor on the other side of Todd and Lori, and they had no concerns at all. So that's all I can say, really. Don't know if any questions arise from it.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Todd, have you any comments on what you've heard so far?
Not really. All I wanted to do was clarify that the structure would be for personal use, just for my toys, basically. And with the size of the lot and everything, I was hoping not to have to put it right at the back if it was granted, due to the extra installing a driveway and that sort of thing. But no, I mean, it would be acceptable if it was granted that I would move it to the back that far.
So you would be okay with the application if it was moved back? Is that
Yes,
what I'm
it
hearing?
would. Yes,
Okay.
it would.
All right, questions or comments from any of the committee members? Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Todd. Todd, I was out, I kind of just viewed the property from the road today, so if you saw a stalker, it was me. But it's a big building. Like, it's a lot bigger than, like, I've got some buildings that I actually went inside of mine, and I'm a lot smaller than what yours is going to be. So is there any chance you can maybe make it a bit smaller? It's going to be overwhelming, I think, but that's my opinion. But what do you think?
I would be willing to reduce the size of it if required. Obviously, I would like to put up a structure. Ideally, I want to have one that would have an overhang that I would be able to park a fifth wheel trailer under eventually if I purchased one. But yes, I would definitely be willing to reduce the size of it if required.
Okay, to what size would work for you?
Well, the maximum is 200 square meters, 2,150 square feet. In a perfect world, I would like to have it at 2,500 square feet, which would be a 30 by 60 with a 18 by 60 lean-to portion along the south side of it.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I think there's room for negotiation here. You have a large lot. Obviously, the zoning bylaw is meant for a smaller lot, but because you have 1.2 acres, that does accommodate a little more flexibility. And so I'm going to suggest that to staff and to council and the committee, that we accept the application, provided it goes to 2,500 square feet, which is a little smaller than what the original application is, and be set back to accommodate the neighbor's concern as well. Would that be all right with you, Todd?
Yes, that would be fine. I could get it redesigned.
And the neighbor as well? Comments?
We had no concerns with the size the way it was, so that's all I can say.
Okay. It is a little large. In fact, it's not a minor variance, it's a major variance. So we want to keep this in the minor range. So if 2,500 square feet will accommodate Todd and move it back, then I think I see most heads nodding that this is acceptable.
Todd, is that going to mean that you'll have some of your toys out of the shop that would have otherwise been in the shop?
Yes, I did plan on leaving some of the stuff inside the shop, but I can,
On the modification.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
so,
I can still put stuff in. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because we'd rather see it in the shop than around
Okay,
the, and like, we
I think
don't
we've come to a
concerned with you,
compromise.
so.
Say, I know, so I
Great.
need a mover and seconder, report number DS 21-59, entitled Minor Variance Application, D13MV0209-21 of Todd and Lori Sprague, and affecting lands described as part lot 78, concession South Talbot Road, part 2, 11R-6248, geographic township Malahide, 9281 Rogers Road be received. And then the Township Malahide Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance application, number D13MV09-21, for relief from the maximum accessory building floor area of 200 square meters in order to construct a maximum accessory building with a floor area. I'm going to go 2,500 square feet because I don't know what that is in meters, so. And the approval of minor variance subject to the following conditions: that the owner and applicant obtain the necessary building permits and obtain the occupancy in the proposed structure within 1 year from the date of decision, and satisfaction of the chief building official, ensuring that the approved variance applies only to the proposed detached structure, which is to be situated 15.2 meters from the rear property line. That's correct. And the owner applicant entered into a development agreement with the Township of Malahide to regulate the use, architectural design, and location of the proposed detached accessory structure on the subject property, and any screening deemed appropriate in relation to the budding properties. Mover and seconder. Serna and Widner, all in favor? Carried. And finally, mover and seconder, the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Malahide be adjourned and council reconvene at 7:50. Mover and seconder, mover, Serna, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have a presentation. So, is everyone here? Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thank you.
We have a presentation from Jamin Chin and Olivia LaHaye. There they are. Okay, welcome, folks. We'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much, and through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight to talk about the review we recently concluded of the Elgin County Road Maintenance Agreement. My name is Jamin Chin. I'm a Vice President with Strategy Corp and the project lead for the team that conducted this review, and my colleague Olivia LaHaye joins me as lead consultant for the review. Our goal today will be to provide you with a high-level overview of the process, findings, and recommendations that came out of this review in order to help provide you with the information required to ensure that and answer any questions you may have in order to ensure that our recommendations can form the basis for an informed renewal of the road maintenance agreement in 2022. This is one of a number of these presentations that we have and will be doing after today's session. We'll continue to provide presentations in advance of a final presentation to County Council on December 9th to conclude our project. So before we jump in, I do just want to start by saying that this has been quite an involved process over a number of months that involved a lot of time from staff from across the county and the local municipalities. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't extend my thanks to all the time and effort they put to it. Obviously, there are some complex issues to be worked on through this, and the success of reports and reviews like this is predicated entirely on the support of staff from municipalities. And so I do want to express my gratitude for that effort. In my opinion, this was quite a successful review to conduct. There are really two key documents. I'll just start off by saying that serve as the final outputs of this review. One of which, the final report, will go through the executive summary as the basis of our presentation tonight. The second is what we call a term sheet, and that really lays out the legalese and the revised conditions and terms that were agreed upon by the members of the advisory committee to form the basis for a new agreement. So in sum total, there's a lot of detail across those two documents. But for today's presentation, as I said, we'll try to focus on the executive summary just to give you some of the highlights and provide you with an overview. I'd start off by just laying out and rehashing the context for this review. We were retained by the county earlier this summer to look at all aspects of the road maintenance agreement and recommend revisions and improvements to be considered as part of its regular renewal. It renews on a 5-year cycle, which is due next year in 2022. The rationale for the review is really based on a number of long-standing concerns and items noted by both the county and the local municipalities in its current structure and operation. The agreement was first developed and signed in 1998 to provide funding for the local municipalities to maintain the county's roads on its behalf. And since then, it's gone through a number of different revisions over since that time to both the terms and conditions of the agreement itself and the funding formula. So it's been a bit of a living document, and I think, in quite a number of instances, outlives the folks that are responsible for managing it. And so a complex document to review. In 2020, we conducted a service delivery review, we being Strategy Corp, for the county across all of county services. And the road maintenance agreement came up as one with a number of opportunities to address again, identified by both the county and discussions with local municipal stakeholders. Those issues included some related to the performance of the services outlined in the agreement itself, looking at mechanisms to improve trust and collaboration across the parties, potential opportunities to reduce costs and improve productivity, as well as the resident experience, and ultimately to look at the road maintenance agreement as a foundation for further progress in maturing the county's overall approach to shared services and utilizing them in the delivery of municipal service. So our mandate was to look at all of these different areas and provide recommendations about how a revised agreement might capture some of them. The next slide really looked at our approach. We were governed by an advisory committee of representatives appointed from each of the local municipalities as well as the county. It was a cross-functional committee that consisted of road superintendents, CAOs, and treasurers. And ultimately, that committee was delegated authority by the CAOs to provide us with oversight and support in decision-making around different issues and recommendations. We worked with that group and the CAOs to first look at what the core issue areas were for us to focus on. And there were 4 in total. The first was governance and communications. The second, the scope of services themselves defined in the schedule to the agreement. The funding formula is the third, and the fourth, finally, was reporting and enforcement mechanism. So for each of those areas, we conducted a separate work stream to look at what the key areas of concern were, what potential solutions might be, what the impact of those solutions and issues are, and then put that analysis and recommendations to the advisory committee for their decision. And ultimately, the cumulative decisions across those four areas conducted in 4 workshops formed the basis for the report that you now have in your hands. All of the report is structured kind of around those 4 key topic areas. And on the next slide, I can define a little bit more about what we mean when we talk about them. With respect to governance and communications, our focus is really on addressing core concerns related to how the different parties are able to collaborate and communicate together to conduct road maintenance operations, looking at a lack of clear dispute resolution mechanisms beyond escalation to council, developing processes for amending the agreement in the course of its operation between renewal cycles, and in general to create an enhanced structure for managing road maintenance activities and escalating and managing issues that may arise in day-to-day operations. The scope of services was really focused on looking at areas of ambiguity and disagreement over the activities themselves. So in particular around service levels, and around clarifying the responsibility, or what falls under the bucket of capital costs versus maintenance costs, which delineates the responsibility of the county versus the local municipal partners, and whether or not it makes sense for the county, given those different responsibilities and given some of the costs and historical operations associated with them, whether or not it makes sense for the county to take a greater role in delivering some of those services itself, to enhance cost efficiency based on economies of scale. When we looked at the funding model, really the question was whether or not the current funding formula defined in the agreement adequately covers the true cost of service delivery, and whether amendments should be made to that formula. And then finally, when we looked at reporting and enforcement, our goal was to enhance the consistency in reporting and data collection, better harmonize the level of service provided across local municipalities versus what's defined in the road maintenance agreement, and to ensure that the county has appropriate mechanisms to enforce RMA obligations, and that the lower tiers have a likewise mechanism to escalate concerns and achieve a resolution. The outcome of that work on the next slide is really a wide-ranging set of items. As you'll note, the report itself is quite a lot longer than the executive summary that we'll be able to go over with you tonight. But I'll talk about a few of the major highlights and changes that are intended to be achieved by our recommendations, which were all presented to, agreed upon by the advisory committee representing all of the parties involved. So the first is that we have developed a revised governance structure and communications processes, and clearly articulated the principles that underpin the agreement to clarify roles and responsibility. And key here is the inclusion, I think, of a regular reporting and escalation structure that includes the CAOs discussing performance under the agreement and ongoing issues on a regular basis, rather than relying on ad hoc and interpersonal dispute resolution. We've developed, as part of the term sheet that's appended to this report, a set of amendments to the service schedule that clarify and simplify standards, and also identified, as I said, a number of shared procurement opportunities that the county can take a lead on, based on economies of scale to achieve cost savings and potentially higher quality or service levels around certain specific services. When it comes to the funding model, something that was of particular interest for the committee, we did conduct an analysis of available data to try to answer the question of whether or not the funding that is provided to lower tiers adequately covers the cost of service delivery. There's kind of 2 conclusions that we could draw from that. And the first is that based on the available data, there's no clear evidence that the funding formula is insufficient. Roughly speaking, based on the 3 years of recent data and historically, based on the self-reported costs by the lower tiers, The funding formula is about roughly right in line with the true cost of service delivery related to maintenance on county roads. But I'll caveat that by saying that there are substantial deficiencies in the data that was collected and made available to us. It's possible to do a much deeper level of analysis around costs, operations, and to try to come to a common basis for comparison rather than relying on self-reported costs at year end. But the data that is currently collected across the county doesn't collectively allow us to do that. It's often inconsistent in how it's calculated, doesn't track costs and activity to the necessary level to come to a good determination around key factors driving costs. And so our intended analysis would have been to recalculate those costs based on better information. Unfortunately, that we weren't able to do so with the data that's available. So our recommendations on the funding model are really twofold. The first is that the current funding formula and financial terms should be maintained. The second is that the additional data that we were looking for should be collected over time and enable the different parties to reassess the formula based on a framework we provided and could be amended during the intervening period between renewals if required through the revised governance process I described. Finally, on reporting enforcement, we've developed a harmonized set of standardized reporting mechanisms that include collecting the data I just discussed around operations and finances on a standard basis, as well as simplifying the reporting obligations by the local municipalities in other areas to enhance data collection and compliance and the ability to gather the required information to effectively manage the agreement and understand the level of service being provided. In addition to that, the county has endorsed the potential investment in a GIS-linked asset and work order management solution that should make data collection easier. And we've also recommended that standardized performance reporting could be done in a number of areas on a less frequent basis in order to reduce the workload required of staff at the local municipal partners. So in the final slide, really there are 17 key recommendations at a high level, obviously much more substantial detail in the report. I'll spare reading each of them out, but essentially these 17 steps form the basis for how we think the county and the local municipalities can work together to revise and implement a renewed road maintenance agreement in 2022 and achieve the outcomes we've described. Doing this would, I think, resolve a number of the longstanding issues and concerns identified by all of the parties involved, as well as set up Elgin County to continue to improve the performance and management of the agreement over time, which is an important element. So that, I think, concludes the high-level overview and executive summary we had to share with you tonight. I would be happy to take any questions or comments on our presentation or the full report. And again, our final presentation at County Council is on December the 9th. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jamin, for that report. And certainly I know from the lower tiers, there was some concern that we open up the agreement between the county and the lower tiers, that there was some discrepancies, and it's good to see that we've got recommendations coming forward that will satisfy everyone. So thank you so much for the report. Anyone have any questions for any of the staff from Strategy Corp? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for a very thorough process and detailed and well-organized report. So I guess my question is more for staff. So I understand that we won't be able to fine-tune the formula until we have better data. And I understand from the report that different municipalities are at different stages or capability of producing that data. So I'm trying to gauge where we're at in Malahide, and do we have a lot of work to do to improve our data collection? Are we already there? Do you foresee additional burden, or perhaps this is positive? So I'm sort of interested in staff's opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to you, Deputy Mayor. In discussions with our road staff, Ryan DeSutter, and in previous discussions with Matt Sweetland. I believe we are in a solid position with regards to our data fitting into this study. But I would let the consultants add any comments they have when they've reviewed the Malahide data.
Having reviewed all the different municipal data collection, Malahide was certainly near the most comprehensive data that was made available to us. So certainly among your peers, you're doing quite well.
Any other questions for Strategy Corp? Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a question, I guess, on the contractual recommendations, like number 6, changes to service levels with respect to grass cutting, line painting, and road signs. Can you expand on that? Like what are we expecting here?
Sure, I can go into that in a bit more detail. So the specific details with respect to what the service changes were are laid out in the term sheet, which is the text document that accompanies the PowerPoint. And essentially the changes to the grass cutting, the first one was in relation to concerns with the full property line cutting that in many municipalities due to things like slope and even just other logistics like that was deemed to be a bit of a burden that wasn't necessarily necessary. And county policy had already kind of pivoted to understand that some level of naturalization was perhaps warranted as long as things like noxious weeds were dealt with. So we kind of just were doing some formalization of that to remove some of those more onerous tasks that everyone agreed were not necessarily necessary, and county policy had already changed to reflect. So we just made sure that that was reflected in the agreement. The second one, with respect to line painting, had to do specifically with repainting following resurfacing and where the responsibility for that lay. So basically the pivot here is that a provision should be added to the schedule so that the county takes on responsibility for remarking roads following capital resurfacing or repaving on county roads, but that the idea of the spirit of continued collaboration happens so that, you know, the idea is to not be marking roads twice in 1 year as it's unnecessary. So the idea is the county will take on the cost for that, but there's certainly language there to ensure that that collaboration continues to save the municipality doing it and then the county doing it afterwards. And then the last one was on road signs, specifically with reflectivity testing, that when roads fail reflectivity testing, the county will be responsible for replacing those, for providing the materials for the cost of replacing those signs, as that is considered capital works when the signs eventually over time do become less reflective and need to be replaced. However, things like damage due to accidents would continue to be the local municipality's responsibility, as there's a lot of, in terms of speed of replacement and stuff, those are better dealt with by municipality. So those are the 3 main changes to service standards that are in the scope of service.
Thank you.
Any other questions for these folks? Seeing none, thank you so much for the report. Mover and second, the presentation from Jamin Chin and Olivia LaHaye and Connor Sharp of Strategy Corp relating to the County of Elgin Road Maintenance Agreement review be received. Jaguar and Galinsky, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Bob, you've got the next one on the Ferguson Drain.
Yes, Your Worship. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I have 2 reports tonight. First one is a request for improvement on the jail Ferguson Drain. The township received a request for improvement from a landowner on the jail Ferguson Drain. The existing Ferguson Drain was constructed pursuant to a report done by Mr. Bell in 1913. So this is quite an old drain. We've examined the drain and area in question and are recommending that council accept the landowner's request for improvement and proceed with provisions under section 78. Once council initiates the drain improvement, notice will be sent out to local municipalities, local conservation authorities, and OMAFRA. These agencies have the right under section 78 to request an environmental appraisal or a cost benefit analysis, both of which would be at their own expense. If no notice is received after 30 days, council may then proceed to appoint an engineer to prepare a new engineer's report. So this is kind of a deviation from what we normally do. The current process we've had in place since I've been here. I've been going through the Drainage Act. I go through the Drainage Act periodically to check things, and I did notice section 78(2) of the Drainage Act said, that an engineer shall not be appointed until these CAs, these agencies have had the chance to request either an EA or a cost benefit analysis. So we weren't previously doing that before. My guess is that it's rarely used by these agencies. It's rarely requested by these agencies because of the fact that they have to pay for it themselves out of pocket. So moving forward, I think I would like to see this step added at the start of the drain process once again, to try and stick to the Drainage Act as close as possible here. So it's a little different way of doing these reports. Now we're going to have 2 reports instead of 1 report. I don't think it's going to add a whole lot of extra time to the entire process. I don't think it'll be a hardship for anyone. It's just something I feel that we need to add at the start of the process. That's all I have for this one.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Questions for Bob on the Ferguson drain? Mover and seconder, report number PW-21-59 entitled Request for Improvement, JL Ferguson Drain be received. The request for improvements be accepted by the council, and that notice be sent to CA/MNRF and OMAFRA and local municipalities affected. Mover, Alinsky, all in favor? Carried. And we have a Burke's drain there, Bob?
Yes, so the second report I have tonight is kind of the same vein as the first one. This is a petition for drainage, this time under section 4 of the Drainage Act. The township received a request from a landowner along Lyons Line. He's petitioned to have a new drain installed on the north side of the line to service a small piece of his property that he feels requires drainage. Once again, council, we have the right to, we have to give notification to the local CAs, OMAFRA and local municipalities so that they have a chance to request the aforementioned environmental analysis or cost benefit assessment at their cost. So at this time, we're recommending that the council accept the petition for drainage and proceed with the provisions as outlined under sections 5 to 7 of the Drainage Act.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Questions for Bob on this request? None. Mover and seconder, report number PW-21-55 entitled Petition for Drainage. Burke's petition be received. Petition for drainage accepted by the council. The notice be sent to CA/MNRF and OMAFRA and the local municipalities affected so they may request a benefit cost statement or an environmental appraisal. Mover, Widner and Serna, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, Adam, you're next with the budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a bit of a housekeeping item just to set the budget committee meeting dates for 2022's budget deliberations. We're projecting that the budget will be ready for review by February 14th. After that, we'd have a 30-day review period and then budget deliberations would start. I didn't receive any objections prior to this submission, so hopefully the dates work with everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for Adam on the budget? I know traditionally we have it a little earlier, but I understand that you being new in that position and having to kind of play catch-up, I understand that it's not quite as early as we expected, but that's fine. Questions for Adam? Seeing none. Mover and seconder, report number FIN-2115 entitled 2022 Budget Committee schedule be received, and the following meeting schedule for the Budget Committee for 2021 budget deliberations be approved. Tuesday, March 15, 2022 at 7, Tuesday, March 29th at 22 at 7, and Tuesday, April 12th, 22 at 7. Mover and seconder. Winder and Lewis, all in favor? Carried. And the assessment update, Adam?
Yes, so the province has decided to defer the reassessment period again by MPAC. They did so last year because of COVID, and they've chosen to do so again for 2022 and 2023. I've detailed it in the report. I don't have much to add to the commentary, but essentially it translates to a tax relief for farmers being deferred until the reassessment takes place. I'm happy to elaborate on any points I've addressed in the report further for council.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I know that there's going to be addressed in correspondence, and certainly I have a concern that this is being postponed because it puts an unfair burden on commercial, industrial, and farmland, because certainly houses, the assessment on residential has gone up significantly in the last, well, 5 years. And it's not fair for those because of this deferment. So certainly I'm going to be speaking to this in correspondence, but any questions for Adam in the meantime? Okay. Mover and seconder, report number FIN-2116 entitled Assessment Update, postponement be received. Lewis and Jagger, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have the severance by Rocks Farms. Adam?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a standard surplus farmhouse severance application. There's nothing further to add to staff's report.
Questions for Adam on this application? None. Mover and seconder, report number DS-2161 entitled Application for Consent, Sever of Rocks Farms Limited be received. Application for consent to sever of Rocks Farm Limited, regarding the property located at Lot 11, Concession 11, Township of South Dorchester, known as 49779 Lions Line, be supported for the reasons set out in this report. This report and the recommendation conditions before the Land Commission for its review and consideration. Mover and seconder, Widner and Cerna, all in favor? Carried. And just so there's 9 conditions, so I need a mover and seconder for the conditions, please. Jagger and Lewis, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have committees and outside boards. There's one from the complex. There's minutes from November 24th. Any errors or omissions? If none, I'll take a mover and seconder for the minutes. Mover, Lewis, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have correspondence. Anyone wish to make comments on the correspondence? I was number 5, as I mentioned with Adam on the postponement of the reassessment. As I said, this takes an undue burden on commercial, industrial, and farmland. In fact, that There is a shift, obviously, to residential in the last 5 years, which is not being done, and so those different property classes are taking an undue burden, and so certainly I would support number 5. So if I get heads nodding on that, we will support number 5. Any other ones that, there's 10 items here? So no burning issues, we'll support number 5 and receive and follow the balance. So mover and second for that. Winder and Moore, all in favor? Carried. Now, under other business, we did have a note from Karen Vecchio, and this is in regard to high-frequency rail. I don't know if you folks got opportunity to see that, but the feds are reviewing high-frequency rail. It's not high-speed rail. I think it's just an improvement over what we have, and they want to investigate high-frequency rail from Windsor to Quebec City. And so basically, it's an investigation, but they do want comments by December 5th, which is a pretty short turnaround. But basically, certainly Adam and I and Dominique and I have talked about this, and I think it's worthwhile investigating. Certainly, we will have opportunity to make comment. And my understanding at the present time that it's using existing rail lines that may deviate down the road, but at the present time, that's what they're looking at. So I suggest that we support this. I think it's a good thing for Ontario, southwestern Ontario, to have a better frequency of rail lines going forward. So if I see heads nodding, that we will support or send a letter of support to Karen in further investigation. Okay. So do you need a special motion on that or just staff direction? Staff direction? Okay. So anything else under other business? Max?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just learned this evening as I was coming into the building that Bonnie Kellington is retiring as caretaker and cleaning lady at the present library. And present to this, she also did the same at the former Springfield Library and Village Council Chamber. And she continued on after amalgamation at the new library and the fire hall. And I would like to say thank you and give her honorable mention for her many years of dedication and the great job she did, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Max. And certainly we can make
I
note
don't
of
know
that.
how many years, but it's going back considerable. And Adam, if we need more information, check with Colleen DeVos at the library.
Certainly. Thank you, Max. We'll make note of that. Rick, you had another.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been getting a slew of calls about how the Southwestern Ontario Public Health reports COVID-19 cases. And if you've always noticed, Elmer is so high, and people don't want to go to Elmer anymore because of that. And yet, if they go by N5H as an Elmer postal code, it takes in a big area. And a lot of it doesn't have anything to do with the town of Elmer. And when you read the Elmer Express, it'll say, well, Elmer had 35 cases, Malahide had 2. But my kids live in Richmond, and they have an N5H postal code. So they're not even in Malahide, they're not even in Elmer, they're in BAM in Richmond, and yet if one of them gets COVID, they get credited to Elmer. So I'm wondering if we can find out or inquire as to a way to get more accurate reporting. Now, somebody told me you use all 6 digits, not just the first 3. Because in Elmer, or in Malahide, postal code N5H2R1, that's out in the country. But yet, Southwestern Ontario Public Health is saying, no, that's Elmer. And it's really, really affecting the town. I support Elmer 1,000% whenever I can. But when people are telling me that they're not going to Elmer to shop because of the high COVID cases, it's really unfair to the town. So I'm wondering if we can kind of look into that.
Well, we've requested that from Southwest Public Health before to separate Elmer from Malahide and so on. And we have not been successful on breaking it down. But certainly we can put another request in.
Well, I think, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I think if they won't do it, we just keep asking for it.
Well,
And hopefully it'll resolve itself.
certainly we can give staff direction to ask the Southwest
Okay,
Public
thank
Health
you.
to buy that. Mark, you had something else?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to give a good shout out to the Kinsmen and all the participants in the Elmer Parade last Saturday.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with the turnout.
You were in there. It's nice to see the residents out for something that appeared more normal for a long time, so a lot of smiling faces and, you know, a great thing to have it, so thank you.
In fact, it's probably one of the better turnouts I've seen for quite a while, Mark, yeah. Anything else under other business? Seeing none, mover and seconder, council move into closed session at 8:25. Pursuant to section 239-2 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, to discuss the following matter. 1, a labor relation employee negotiation regarding performance review. Mover and seconder, Lewis and Glinski, all in favor? Carried. Are we good? Okay, thanks, Allison. In regard to our closed session, I need mover and seconder that all eligible non-union managements, municipal staff be awarded the appropriate grid level advancement effective January 1st, 2022. Glinski and Moore, all in favor? Carried. Bylaw, mover and seconder bylaw number 21-86, being a confirmatory bylaw, be given a first, second, third reading and properly signed and sealed. Mover and seconder, Lewis and Serna, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And mover and seconder, the council adjourn its meeting at 8:32. To meet again on December 16th at 7:30. Glinski and Widner, all in favor? Carried.